Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our final session, our session number 3, in which we're going to talk about launching your programs again. And this is the real meat and potatoes session of the group here, where we're going to get into some specifics on how to accomplish this within the League Apps platform. First, to just generally set this up, I think when it comes to starting back up again, starting your programs after a long break, there's a lot to keep in mind. And particularly when it comes to restrictions and some of the constraints that are still in place related to the pandemic, we have to recognize that there's still a lot of anxiety, there's still a lot of uncertainty, there's still things that we are learning as administrators and your members are learning just as members of their community. So there's a couple of important topics that we're going to just address briefly to set this up. And that is, one, safety has always got to be number one. This is the key to any organization to operate successfully. If safety is not at the forefront of what you do, chances are that's going to burn you at some point. So it's important to make sure that safety of your participants, safety of the community is always number one. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. Secondly, we're going to talk about how to leverage League Apps to keep your community safe. There are specific tools and specific things in which you can leverage within the platform itself that will help you accomplish that goal. We're going to touch on a few of those. And lastly, we're going to talk about the literal launching of programs on League Apps, simply as a refresher, a reminder, how to get your programs created and relaunched on League Apps so that you can take registrations from your members. So just to kind of set the stage here, I want to talk a little bit just about how safety always needs to be number one. And there is some responsibility that sits on us here as administrators. We have responsibility to our members, we have responsibility to our community, we have responsibility to our organization. So how can we make sure that safety is always at the forefront? I think the first big thing is make sure that you are staying in the know. There is so much public health information out there. There are so many great resources from the CDC on down to local health resources. It is not difficult to stay current on all the public health information that relates to hosting of programs and the risks associated with that. As I mentioned, from local to state to national authorities, make sure you are well versed on what that latest information is, what the latest restrictions are. Ignorance is not an excuse in these cases. You need to make sure that you stay in the know so that you can protect your organization and your members. Secondly, that kind of addresses the physical health piece, but I think there's also a really important awareness that we need to have, and that is mental health awareness. We need to, especially after a year away, especially after a lot of developing information, there is a lot of anxiety. There is a lot of uncertainty in our own minds. And so we need to be prepared to meet our audience, our membership, where they are. Returning to normal is not going to be like a light switch. It's not going to be, okay, leagues are open, we're ready to go. It's going to be a long, gradual process. And so we need to go on that journey with our participants. We can implement procedures proactively that are going to help ease this process as part of the way we offer our programs and structure our programs. So I think there needs to be some mental health awareness too, and the fact that we need to meet our members, our participants, where they are mentally. Third is we need to take the time, especially now as we emerge from a pandemic. This is a great opportunity to invest in and reset our culture. We can often very easily get consumed by the busyness of our lives, especially when it comes to running programs. And it's very easy to forget along that path why we do what we do. And it's also very easy for your audience to forget why we do what we do. So this is a great opportunity before you relaunch to revisit your why, and also take that opportunity to remind your membership of why we do what we do. Remind them of the values we hold as an organization. Remind them of the vision we have for their participation in the program. Remind them what we expect of them when they're on the field and the responsibility we expect them to share in. This is a great time to invest that time, invest that energy into resetting and investing in your culture. Lastly, before I turn it over to Taylor, I'm just going to talk about the retraining and going through that same conversation about culture with your team. We've talked a lot about participants. Your participants are going to be struggling with the physical requirements. They're going to be dealing with the mental health situation. So is your staff. So investing the time in reminding your own team about your why and about your how is going to be really important. They're going to need to know that they have someone supporting their journey, and they need to know how they can help support your journey and the journey of your participants. So take the time, invest the time in retraining your team so that they can take the field with confidence, with compassion, and be able to effectively deliver that vision that you have for your program. So I'm going to turn it over to Taylor. He's going to talk about specific best practices.
Great, excellent. So yeah, let's move on to some specifics about League Apps tools that can help you with all this, like relaunching your programming for real. On which you got your strategy laid out, you know what sports you want to do, you know where they're going to happen. Now we need to build those programs in League Apps and actually tell people about it. First, let's talk about communicating up front. Like Nate said, you need to have a good communication strategy. And the best thing here is like a values-based approach. Think about what values your organization lives by, and then your communication needs to build on that, essentially. At League Apps, we have what we call sports dog values. If you're curious about them, you can go to our website and find out. But pretty much everything gets pushed through that lens. Like if we're doing something and it doesn't really fall back on our values, we have to take a step back. So definitely have a values-based approach. For example, if one of your values of your organization is access to sports, increasing access, then that needs to, your messaging approach here needs to be pushed through that lens. And also how you relaunch your programs. Like what would be a barrier for people getting access to sports in this time of relaunching programming in COVID? So that all needs to be considered. And don't throw out your entire identity, build on it. If you've been around a while and your organization is successful because you have strong values and it's working for you, then build on that. Trust in your values and how they're working for you. And then, of course, other things you can do a bit more practical are FAQ pages on your website. People are going to be like, hey, what are your COVID protocols? How are you doing this? Like put that stuff on your website in a clear, easy to access area where people can go get those answers for them. And like my colleague Brittany says on our support team, if you see the same question twice, it's an FAQ. So, if it's also going to save you a lot of time by centralizing that information on your website or somewhere in an FAQ page. It also helps you be consistent with your entire organization. Like Nate said, retraining your staff. That way everyone can go to that one spot, that one repository to get answers, and everyone's consistent, removes confusion. Like we said in the previous webinar, automation is great. We have program descriptions in League Apps, which will give people information before they sign up. Confirmations can give them information after they've signed up. And then we also have email settings in League Apps, which will give information across the board anytime somebody gets an email from League Apps. Be thoughtful in your communication and your messaging. Tone matters. Try to avoid shouty caps that makes people a little bit nervous. Consider your tone when people are actually reading that email over the internet. It's hard to convey mood over in text, so definitely be very thoughtful about that. What I always do and what we do on the CS team is we kind of phone a friend and say, hey, I just wrote this thing. Can you read it for me? Do the same thing. Ask a friend to read your messaging and see how it comes across. And then, of course, over communicate. Make sure you're doing as much as you can that everyone knows what's supposed to be happening. Like you can send out a email blast. You can put something in your email confirmations and stuff like that. But it's very important to over communicate and do the messaging as much as possible so everyone's getting the relevant details. And of course, League Apps has a ton of tools for those communications. Another very powerful tool you'll want to leverage in League Apps are the waivers. You can customize waivers by program. You can have default waivers. For example, maybe one specific facility requires everyone to fill out a waiver and another one doesn't. So you can customize that by program as needed. Also, if you need people to agree to certain protocols, from whether your organization, or the government, or things like that. You can get all that in the waivers. Get away from pen and paper, save yourself some time. That way you have a record of everyone that's signed a waiver or who hasn't. And you can require everyone to agree to that language before they're even allowed to participate in the program. And lastly, we are releasing a new feature, and it goes hand in hand with some of our existing features. This is check-ins, RSVPs, and then what's going to be coming out soon is the health checks feature. So people, 6 hours before an event. They'll get an email requesting them to fill out a health check so you can know if anybody that's showing up is exhibiting symptoms in the past few days or things like that. And you can track all this stuff at a different level. So then you can take attendance, you'll know what their health checks are, and then you can also do RSVP so you know you can anticipate how many people are actually coming to your events. And all this stuff, if you're curious about how all this works, it is all available on our help site, supports.leagueapps.com, and we have great documentation on all of these features. And over here on the right, you'll see there's an example screenshot of the health checks that will be released soon, going through testing right now, where you can get a lot of information. You'll see the check mark there will be a way for your coaches or staff to take attendance. And then we also have a health check icon if somebody's passed it or not. So there's going to be a lot of cool tools there to track attendance. Go ahead and take me to the next slide. And launching on League Apps. So, kind of your final step, you got your messaging, you pretty much know what you want to do. Now we actually have to get these programs out to the world and get people to start signing up for them. One last incredibly important step before you send that program, like put it on Facebook, put it on your website, put it on Twitter, things like that, is you have to test it. I cannot stress this enough. I've been at League Apps for 4 years. I create programs every day. Every now and then I miss a checkbox and the program doesn't work. So it's incredibly important to test your programs beforehand. And you'll notice I put the test step here before duplicating programs. If you have 100 leagues, create one, test it before you start copying. You don't want to copy that program 99 times and then realize you made a mistake in the first one. So very important to test it. Don't just test the program out of League Apps, like put the link on an unpublished web page and try and test it from the very start of that user experience all the way through to the end to payment, just to make sure everything's working properly. You can also set programs as unpublished in League Apps. So if you want to get programs ready, but you don't want them available yet, you can mark them as unpublished, and you can still test a program even if it's unpublished. Other tips, you want to test on multiple devices. Make sure it's looking the way you want it on mobile as well as on a desktop computer, so you know that the experience works for everyone. And like I said, testing will uncover most issues beforehand. We get the situation often enough on the support team where the testing didn't really happen, or the program gets published at 9 p.m. on a Friday and our support team isn't back in the office until that morning. So definitely, I can't stress this enough, to test well in advance just to make sure that everything goes off without a hitch when you do restart your programming, because a lot of your members will not have interacted with the registration system in a year perhaps. This is their first time back. We want to make this as smooth as possible, and testing is the best way to do that. And then of course you've tested it, you like it, looks great, everything's perfect. You can duplicate that program quickly. We have a copy tool program. You always want to double check the details, but if your pricing is generally the same across all your programs, it's a great way to churn out a lot of programs in a pretty short amount of time. And then once you're done with all that, you publish the program. You have direct program URLs in League Apps where you can put that registration link behind a button on your website. We also have program listings. So for example, you have like your site id.leagueapps.com/leagues, stuff like that, that'll list all of your upcoming programs and they update automatically. So you do have a lot of flexibility in publishing your programs. You can take those direct program URLs, put them on Facebook, put them on Twitter, put them on your website, send them in a text message. They're very versatile. It's just a direct link. You click on it, you register, and it's just a very versatile tool to get your programs out there and distribute them quickly. You can also use those direct program URLs or program listings in emails. Like we mentioned before with email templates, that direct program or the program listing URLs don't change. Like everyone that's on League Apps has program listing URLs for every program type, leagues, camps, tournaments, and those don't change. So you can create an email template that has your league listing in it, and you have it ready, and you know that as you create programs and complete programs and unpublish them, that listing will update automatically. So that's a great way to save yourself time as well. You don't always have to be hunting for your direct program URLs. You just have that listing right there ready to go to fire out in an email blast whenever you need to. Excellent. So that's a lot of information we know, all very important stuff to consider as you're looking to relaunch your programs for the spring and the summer. Some other resources that are helpful for you. Our support team is available, support@leagueapps.com. We get back to you same day. We also have our support site, support.leagueapps.com. That's where you can find a massive amount of helpful documentation. Anything that we mentioned today that happens in the platform, you can go to support.leagueapps.com, search for email templates. The steps are right there for you. And then for any future events, check us out on our website, events.leagueapps.com, and that will show you all of our upcoming events. We're always hosting really cool stuff with our events team. They do an absolutely fantastic job. So check out our future events there, and I promise it'll be worth your while. So thanks everyone so much for your time today. We hope you learned something. If you have follow-up questions, be sure to let us know, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.